The Table, Politics 2020. I'm Stacy Smith. This is where we discuss things politically, and there's a lot to talk about this week, from the vice presidential debate last night to Senator Toomey saying that he's not going to run for elective office again. So now let's bring in our panelists right now, and I'm going to introduce them to you. And they are former Republican governor of Pennsylvania, Tom Corbin. He also served as state attorney general and the U.S. attorney for Western District of Pennsylvania. Governor Corbin also now teaches law at Duquesne University. On the other side of the table is a former chairman of the state Democratic Party in Pennsylvania, Jim Byrne. Jim also served as chairman of the Allegheny County Council and as mayor of Millvale. Jim is an attorney here in Pittsburgh. Going back across the table to the Republican side is Chris Frye. Chris has a unique perspective on politics. He's the mayor of Newcastle, which gives him some insight on how federal and state governments actually work. And also he's in an area of Pennsylvania that the Democrats would like to take back because President Trump won that in 2016. Going back to the Democratic side of the table is Amanda Green Hawkins. Amanda served as a national committee woman representing Pennsylvania to the Democratic Party. Amanda also served on Allegheny County Council and is currently an attorney for a major union based here in Pittsburgh. Staying on the Democratic side of the table, we find the great philosopher of Around the Table, Joe Mystic. Joe is a familiar name in Democratic politics across the state. Joe had several roles in city government for Pittsburgh and also served as deputy mayor for the city. And Joe teaches law at Duquesne University, and you can read his weekly column on politics and life in the Trib. Now, our regular analyst, Keith Schmidt, could not join us today, so we are pleased to welcome Sam DeMarco. Sam is the chairman of the Republican Party of Allegheny County, and he is also an elected at-large member of Allegheny County Council. So thank all of you for joining us this morning on Around the Table. And Sam, a special welcome to you for joining us. Hope you enjoy your time here. I think everybody will treat you nicely. At least they say they will. So that's what's
no promises. No promises.
No promises. All right. Now,
hey, Stacy, thanks for having me.
Let's get the niceties out of the way and get into politics. Breaking this morning, and this could change by the time this airs on CBS in Pittsburgh. The Commission on Presidential Debates decided to change the debate style from in person with the two presidential candidates to a virtual debate. The Biden camp basically has said, great. The president said, I'm not going to waste my time on a virtual debate. He's declining to participate. So, Governor Corbin, I'm going to ask you first. You've been involved in these kinds of debates before. What would be your reaction if all of a sudden, a week beforehand, the people who are putting on the debate said they're changing the format?
Well, I think there's a number of factors in there. One, they're looking at it, I think, because of the fact of COVID. Also, it would probably give them better control of him speaking up and interrupting everybody because they would have control of the mic. And from what I have heard so far, the campaigns were not consulted before the decision was made, which is very unusual because usually they are consulted and they negotiate what's going to happen. So he's decided he's not going to participate. I don't think I would participate in a virtual one based upon everything I've seen. No offense to all my colleagues here right now, but you don't get the flow and the flavor that you do in person. They demonstrated last night that you can do it in person. They could separate them. I'll go back to the old game show. They could put them in booths so that they wouldn't spread the COVID and be able to answer the questions. But I think the president probably had a fit of pique saying, I'm not going to engage in something like that because it doesn't allow me to do what I do. Finally, when they're up on stage, there's nobody that can prompt them on answers or anything. When you're doing it on video, you don't know what's next door to them, what they're looking at, whether they're being prompted. And all the people that need to be prompted would be the president, but I don't think he would listen to any prompts there. So I think had they talked about it beforehand, maybe it'd be a different story. But in the long run, he's decided not to. And I think we've had this conversation. Do we need another one?
That's a good question on its own. Jim Byrne, I'm going to bring you in because you've been participating in these kinds of things as state party chairman in the past. Your reaction?
I think it's a mistake for President Trump to take the knee-jerk reaction that he did. I agree with the governor that there should have been more negotiation with both sides to give them a heads up. I suspect they were blindsided by it to some extent. Kudos to Joe Biden for agreeing to do it. The president should rethink this. Jimmy Carter missed the debate in 1980. And I think that might have been a contributor. You can't allow your opponent, especially when your opponent is leading in most major credible polls, to claim additional high ground by walking away from a debate. especially when the initial debate left such a bad image for the country and for the candidates respectively. You want to clean that up and finish on a high note as far as the debate format. So I think that's a mistake. And it's inconsistent for the president to say that he doesn't want to do this virtually. I understand what the governor's saying about that vibe and that feel you get. The reality of CDC guidelines and COVID is we can't really have that right now. Kamala Harris and Mike Pence did it last night, but neither one of them is diagnosed with COVID like the president. So he would be in violation of Mike Pence's own CDC guidelines if he were to show up in person. And I don't think that it's the same as the governor said. We're like TV shows, people are in different rooms. This isn't the dating game with bachelors number 1, 2, and 3 behind the wall. This is presidential high stakes politics, and I think I think they can do this, and they can do this rather effectively.
Sam DeMarco, your response.
I think the governor pretty much covered a number of the concerns that we have. The fact that the campaigns weren't consulted, the president wasn't talked about those folks, so they could at least provide any input before these changes are made. That's concerning. And I wouldn't be surprised to see some adjustment made or something take place to allow this debate to go forward. But the concern is, Joe Biden has been broadcasting from his basement for months. And you've heard rumors and different things of that nature claiming that he was looking at a teleprompter, to answer questions and things like that. So, if they had done a virtual debate where they had a camera both from the front and the back so that folks were able to see if anybody was looking at anything, I would entertain that. But I certainly understand what the governor's talking about. As you saw last night in the vice presidential debate, no matter how trained and how polished and practiced these people are, when they're up there under the bright lights going back and forth answering these questions, they can make some mistakes. And I think that that's what the president was hoping to get from Joe Biden in this upcoming debate in a town hall format in which he's very strong.
Amanda.
Well, I just heard that. I think here's what we have to think about. Something that Jim Byrne mentioned. We're not sure if the president is going to test at a reasonable level for antibodies with this COVID disease that he has. We have no idea of how he's really doing. And that's something to consider. Do we really want him in an environment where he could expose other people or perhaps become more ill himself? And I don't think that we want to risk that. The other piece of this is, and we all know this sitting here, is that as a politician, any airtime that you can get this close to an election, a major election, is airtime that you want to use, particularly if you don't have to pay for it. And so I think it would be a missed opportunity for the president to perhaps perform a whole lot better than he did last time, and also to clarify a lot of things that he said that the public needs some more information on. And so I think it would be a huge mistake.
All right, Amanda, thank you. Chris Frye, Mayor of Newcastle, your thoughts.
Yeah, I didn't get too much information on that before it was presented, but I could speak to just some experience with having received different demands for a debate that I was involved in, just days before it happened. Now, the president's kind of knee-jerk reaction is no, he's not going to do it. I think, it opens him up. He is I would say a negotiator himself. So opening up the doors to negotiate different terms by saying no allows both parties to come back maybe with something different. Do I think if it remains virtual and he doesn't do it, it's a loss? Absolutely. I couldn't agree with Amanda to say, you want to take that time and this is high stakes politics. You got to be in front of the people, no matter what avenue or what venue you're in. I think he should definitely take that action and be a part of it. But it does open the door to negotiate. I don't think it's the end all be all with him saying no about it. It seemed like it was just obviously it was decided without consulting both sides. But the door does need to open up to see what other opportunities, whether you have to social distance even more, do it in separate aisles, not in the bubble like Mr. Corbin said, but definitely find some ways to protect everybody involved due to COVID. But there's definitely room, I think, still to negotiate how it's going to play out.
All right, Joe Mystic, your thoughts.
Well, my initial response to the president's refusal to debate under these new terms is, okay, let's move on. We all have other things to do. He's the big loser here. If he doesn't, if he doesn't want to debate, so be it. As for this being announced without negotiating with the two sides, some things are non-negotiable. Having someone with an extremely infectious, deadly disease appear in proximity to other people during a time while he may be infectious is not something you negotiate. And we know from the Rose Garden event, where the new Supreme Court nominee was announced, that Donald Trump doesn't listen to anybody, and he doesn't seem to care who gets sick. So I don't blame the commission for making a unilateral decision. In fairness, they did not consult with either side, and that makes this a pretty solid decision.
All right, those are your thoughts. Now, we got a lot to talk about, so we're going to move on to another topic already. Now, last night, what many on this panel agreed to would be one of the most important vice presidential debate perhaps in history was held. So the question is, was there a winner? Sam DeMarco, who won? Is there, or was there a winner?
Sure, I get to go first, huh?
Yeah.
I think there was a clear winner last night, and I think that was Vice President Pence. I mean, not only did he comport himself vice presidentially, but presidentially, okay? And I think he was able to take and make the case as to why the Trump-Pence ticket deserves re-election. He was able to take and capitalize on a couple unforced errors, by Senator Harris, one in which she talked about how on the first day of office, Joe Biden is going to immediately repeal the Trump tax cuts, which have provided $2,000 on average relief to American families across the board. So in effect, anybody that would elect the vice president would receive a tax increase. So there were some things there. He also called her on, was able to challenge her on the whether she would pack the Supreme Court. And she didn't answer that, which is basically a tell that that's indeed what their plans are. So I thought he did very well last night. And all the online polls that I saw and pundits believe that he was the big winner there last night.
All right, Sam, I'm sure that Jim Byrne absolutely agrees with everything you just said, right, Jim?
Absolutely not. No, Joe, Mr. Pence last night cut off Kamala Harris 11 times, at least. That's around when I lost count. She had to cut him off. Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. And that spoke to such an uncommon and unpleasant reality of the narrative in politics and in our society. Kudos to Kamala Harris for cutting him off in his attempts to cut her off. Let's talk about, and to use Sam words, basically a tell. Let's talk about two of those where Mr. Vice President did not respond to questions. You want to gut the Affordable Care Act. You want to gut the Affordable Care Act and get rid of it. You want to stack the Supreme Court with a conservative justice that will kill Obamacare and leave 7 million people with COVID, pre-existing conditions, unable to get health care. The president signs executive orders all the time about how he's going to protect pre-existing conditions. Meanwhile, he's ramrodding legislation that had been defeated in the Senate in 2017, but he's trying again to gut pre-existing conditions, leaving Americans in the middle of a pandemic without health insurance. He also did not answer a question, a tell, about what would happen if Vice President Biden and Kamala Harris win. If they win, will there be a peaceful transition of power? He ducked that one as well. He was very smooth. He was very calculated. He was at a very, very calm demeanor, but I don't think he answered 80% of the direct questions that were raised to him. Kamala Harris hit it out of the park last night. So I'm sorry, Sam, I disagree with you.
Somehow I knew that was going to happen. So Governor Corbin, you and I texted very briefly last night during the debate. You said as an attorney, you might raise a few objections.
Oh, I was sitting there, and I'm sure Joe and Jim, they were both sitting there. You want to object to the moderator as a judge and say, unresponsive to the question.
Yes.
But that's the way these modern day debates are. The Lincoln Douglas debates, I assume, were much better than what this is, because this is just, you don't like that question, then put out the answer you want on another question and ignore it. And they all get away with it. So, because I'm on this show with you, I'm watching the debates. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be watching the debates because you know what's going to happen. Now, I will say this. I think as a result of last week's debate with the president, that this debate actually gave the people of the United States a better chance to take a look and listen to the positions of both sides. You know, and both sides are going to say, "Oh no, you're misleading, you're lying, whatever." Hey, that's politics, and you know everybody is out there. So it was a better debate in that respect. Winners, losers. I think the people of the United States were somewhat of a winner because they got informed a little bit better. I think each party came away feeling that their person won, but that happens in almost every debate.
All
I
right.
agree with the governor. I felt the same way, Governor Corbin. I said, wow, the American people won. Our children won because we clearly have people who are capable of leading. And that was really reassuring after the last debate. And governor's right on many levels. You know, we really kind of know what's going to be said, what's going to happen. It's a lot of showmanship. But I think for Kamala Harris last night, it was a very important performance because many people may not have been exposed to her or know what she's about. And I think that she did what she needed to do. She made the case for the Biden-Harris ticket. She was clear about what their policies were and that they had plans for everything that they wanted to do. And she showed that she could be knowledgeable, that she could be firm, that she could be a leader, and that when someone tries to push her around or walk over her, she knows how to use that voice effectively.
All right, Chris, your thoughts.
I thought I did something kind of different last night also because we had our Pennsylvania 16th district congressional debate too that I was able to watch. I don't know if it was live yesterday or not, but I came across it right before the presidential or vice presidential debate. And I just wanted to see, you know, really how they conducted themselves. I thought compared to the congressional 16th PA congressional debate, the vice presidential debate was cordial. You know, they had a much better presence than the presidential debate. And I'll agree with Amanda and Mr. Corbett that both of them, you know, Kamala and Mr. Pence, really presented themselves in a factual manner, in a truthful manner, in a way that allowed the people to see the intellectual ability that's actually running our nation. I will have to side with Sam, though. I do think Pence got the victory on that one. From what I was able to watch last night, he made clear points that are apparent, you know, in today's, you know, environment, especially in local government. You know, I saw the effects of, or I experienced firsthand the effects of what our state lacked, what our state governor was unable to accomplish. And we've talked about this in other talk shows. We were able to see how the trickle down effect from the federal government to the local government has what their intentions were, but may have gotten stalled on certain state and local levels. I saw how, and so I would have to agree with Pence on allowing the states to do it, but we have to have good representation on the state level and the congressional level, you know, who work within our communities to bring it down to our grassroots level. So from what I saw, you know, I would just agree with the fact that, you know, it was a much better environment and something a lot easier to watch than the first debate. And I think I hope that Donald Trump, President Trump, and Joe Biden do theirs, and then follow the examples of, you know, the folks that are in their cabinet, you know, both on the congressional level and as their vice president, so we can actually get something to evaluate them both properly on.
All right, Chris, thank you. Joe Mystic, I know you're easily swayed, so I'm sure that the debate last night swayed you one way or the other, right?
Well, I want to say that I'm a big admirer of Sam's, but they must have been shown a different debate on Fox News than the one I was watching. Because from my perspective, they both did okay. You know, they both did the job they were supposed to do. Senator Harris had to show that she was up to the job. She was up to the task, and I think that there's no question after last night's debate. And Vice President Pence had the satisfying audience of one, and that's his president. And I think that he did that admirably. So both of them come out having done the job they were supposed to do. Truth be known, vice presidential debate never moves the needle, even in these extraordinary times. And we all had a good glimpse of two people who can do the job and who did the job they were assigned to last night.
All right, let's move on to the next topic. That, of course, is, as has been mentioned in our discussion already today, and that is that the president has come down with COVID. Is this going to have an effect on the election itself? Joe?
Yeah, well, Donald Trump tried to make Joe Biden's health an issue throughout this entire campaign. And now he's the one who has a debilitating disease. So, karma's tough in politics, but, he has to now prove to the people that he's going to be up to the job for the long haul. And from what we know from the disease, there are lingering effects. We're not sure how long he's going to remain infectious, how long he's going to be shedding the virus. And that leads to complications or controversy over the upcoming debate. Plus, we don't know what kind of shape he's going to be once he passes through the critical period of this disease. So he made it an issue, and now it's an issue that he has to overcome.
Chris Frye, your thoughts quickly.
I don't know how much it's going to affect his standings and what he accomplishes over this next month or so. Going back to Joe Biden, there's some clear health issues that Joe Biden has, things that are going to affect him in a 4-year run at 78 years old, things that can just pop up out of nowhere. COVID is one of those things that, the scientists and the doctors are working on vaccines, they're working on medicines. And I know people personally who are really back to normal after being diagnosed or testing positive for. So I truly don't think it's going to have much effect on his race in the next month. I think it's going to be a dead issue here real soon. But it does give a little bit, I think, in terms of the polls, and what people feel is that it's one of those I told you so moments that, if he denied it or downplayed COVID early on, it's going to be fuel in the fire to say, now that you have it. So I think that's what's going to affect him the most, what he downplayed, and then ultimately he came up with symptoms and was tested positive for it.
Amanda.
I have to apologize because as the mayor was speaking, when he talked about no lingering effects or lack of lingering effects from COVID, I had to do a little eyebrow raise there because I know plenty of people, and we've heard from many people who have lingering effects months after COVID exposure. And so I think that we don't know. There's a lot we don't know. And then for people who are undecided, we have to look at them and ask them, how are you going to trust this administration to deal with COVID when they currently have this disease running rampant through the White House? And that's a good question. And for anybody who's undecided, I think that may be something that will turn them towards the Biden team.
All right, Governor Corbin.
This race is down to about 6 to 8% difference. The people who may still be undecided, although I don't know how you're undecided at this point. And the president's actions when he got it and going to Walter Reed, coming back to the White House, probably lost him, in my opinion, more votes than it gained him in that approach. He can't continue to conduct business that way. Here in Pennsylvania, we've seen the numbers change from what we reported on this show 5 weeks ago to the Biden favor. You can't continue to slide. And when you have COVID and you act that way, he's not helping himself in trying to get reelected.
Jim Byrne.
I agree with Governor Corbett. And this handling of the COVID is a conversation that we've had on this panel since May or June. And our friend Keith Schmidt, who's not here, I think he's the first person who laid out this narrative, and correctly so. This race will be won or lost in the weeks where we are now before the general election on how President Trump has handled the COVID pandemic. before he got the COVID pandemic, he was getting abysmal approval ratings on that specific issue, which was driving undecideds to Joe Biden. That has exponentially increased in the favor of the Democratic challenger, Joe Biden, now that A, the president has been diagnosed with this deadly disease, and B, what is even worse, how he has responded to his own diagnosis, almost like a state of denial. Stage 1 of Kubler-Ross. He's acting that way right now. He's in total denial, and he's doubling down on this narrative, and he's being reckless in his doubling down of it. He is probably patient zero at that West Wing rollout, and there are now 20 people in the West Wing who have tested positive. The West Wing, the most powerful political office on the planet, is now a COVID hotspot, most likely because of his recklessness. So he's running out of time, and he's running out fast. Look how fast the polls have pivoted to Joe Biden in the last week alone. To miss a debate next week, irrespective of the format, and to say he's going to come to Pittsburgh and do a rally, really? He's not helping himself. I don't see him having an epiphany and changing course with 2.5 weeks left.
All right, Sam, your thoughts.
I have a lot to unpack here, Stacy. First of all, when we talk about COVID, it affects different people differently. And while there's some people that have gotten very ill, there are some people that have passed away. There are many that have just been asymptomatic or others suffered just minor symptoms and have gone about their lives. So we don't know what the effects are going to be on everyone, nor what the long-time lingering effects are going to be on the president. Secondly, in regard to the COVID pandemic here and its handling of it, one of the things that's missing here, the Democrats have seized on the opportunity to attack the president on his handling. But yet, in not a single time have I heard the Democrats articulate what it is that they would do differently. If you look at Joe Biden's plan, and when he announced his national plan, it was all things that the administration and the president were already doing. And if you look at, you say, well, okay, how would somebody handle a pandemic? As the vice president pointed out last night, we only have to go back to when Vice President Biden was there in the Obama-Biden administration, which the H1N1 flu hit. In that particular case, over 60 million Americans became infected with that. And his chief of staff, Ron Klain, said that purely out of the stroke of luck, that disease was not as deadly. Otherwise, it could have been one of the greatest mass casualty events in American history. So I think what the president needs to do is pivot here, call the Democrats out on what are you going to do differently, and then stress the policies and achievements that this administration has had. I believe at the end of the day, when people go to the polls, they're going to care about the things that matter, the things that allow them to put food on their table, a roof over their families' heads, send their kids to school, and things of that nature. But keeping them safe is a big part of that. So I think if he pivots to that, he can turn this around. But he certainly has some concerns right now.
All right,
Stacy,
go ahead.
Stacy, if I could add one thing, a lot of questions that were asked last night that neither party answered the question. But following up on what you just said, one of the questions I believe the senator was, what is your administration going to do? Are you going to close down businesses and require everybody to wear masks? That's a big question that's going to affect a lot of people. And I think they're going to have to come up with a response. I endorse what Sam said about that in that regard.
Stacy, if I may, one last thing, and I apologize, but when we originally shut down, the purpose of shutting down was to take and prevent overwhelming the health system. We wanted to flatten the curve. It was never about stopping all cases from occurring, because you can't do that when you have a virus out there running rampant across the nation. So just wanted to add that. Thank you.
All right.
But we also have to add that the American people weren't told the truth. First and foremost, we weren't told the truth. And there were things, had people known, they would have done a lot of things differently. That's what I believe. That's what I know, at least for me and mine, that we would have done a lot of things differently. There are a number of family members I have and friends who have family members who have gotten coronavirus. Some have recovered well, some have not. They have lingering effects. And guess what? Some have also passed away. And had they known, were their final words, had they known.
A couple of other questions I have for you, and we'll do these quickly. And that would be, the president this past week said he was going to cut off negotiations as far as a new stimulus package, cutting off the negotiations with the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. saying that she's not negotiating. She turned around and said that the president's not negotiating. What effect will this have, if any, on the presidential race? But more so, will this have an effect on some congressional races, especially the race for Conor Lamb? I'm going to start with you, Amanda.
Well, I think that one of the things that we saw with the last debate is how difficult it can be to negotiate or discuss anything with this president. And for our down ballot races like Conor Lamb's, I don't think that this will be something that will fall on him and his race too much, because I think the American people will see that, hey, it's not his fault. They'll see that about their own congressmen and senators. It's not their fault, and that they'll blame this where it should lay, with the president.
All right, Chris Frye, you're in an area that obviously, like most areas, a lot of people are hurting. They need some extra money if they possibly can get it from the federal government. Your thoughts on the decision to end the negotiations?
I don't know if I can agree with ending negotiations. I'm certain that they probably wouldn't come up with a decision before, within the next month with all that's going on. The impact of people, I do want to say, with the changes that have been made, more people have gotten back to work. And on the ground, you see businesses opening back up. Ones that I actually feared were going to shut down. I know it's not the same in every community, but businesses, small restaurants, boutiques, places like that I initially feared were going to shut down, have opened back up, and people are back to work in Newcastle. I know in some other smaller communities around here. So, I have to, and listening to the debate last night, I think the stimulus package needs to focus on, what's in front of us. What are the effects of COVID-19 and how it's impacting the people of America? When you start getting into the energy talk and getting into, sliding in some political ammo to help out with the election, I think it's right to hold off on it. I don't, have the appropriate numbers to say who's affected and who's not. They throw out 50 million, 20 million around. But, from what I see in local government right now, what we've been able to receive is helpful, with, rebounding from the effects of COVID.
All right, Governor Corbin.
Well, I'm not sure how this is going to work, because things are different now in this election than they have been throughout my entire voting history. And that is, in Pennsylvania, there's no more pulling a single level for the Republicans or the Democrats. And it's going to be very interesting to see what the fall off is in the state row officers and then in the congressional seats, as to how that's affected. So they've actually been separated from the president in that regard. So that's going to be new to us that follow this stuff. But also the fact that the president and Nancy Pelosi aren't talking, that's not new news. The impact, though, is what's going to happen on the voter. And I think it probably is going to make a decision for voters who need that money as compared to voters who really don't need that money. The people who don't need that money, they're probably going to be sympathetic, but it's not going to be their number one issue. There are a lot of issues for Conor Lamb and his opponent to run on, and for all the congressional candidates to run on. They're finally separated a little bit in Pennsylvania, and they're going to have to stand on their own merits if people ever get down to those levels.
But Governor, which way do you think that will, using what you said, which way do you think people will lean at this point then?
Well, I haven't seen what the numbers are. I think that it's a very competitive race at this point in time. And I can't make a prediction as to what people are going to do because of that. What happens if they do agree tomorrow to it? It's just that's too many variables for me to make a prediction.
All right, that would be your case. Joe Mystic, you agree?
Well, Donald Trump has successfully built a career out of acting impulsively, following his instincts, but he's in a different spot now. This is just not good politics for him. I think the polls are showing that the public blames him for this. He came out with a bold statement that he was cutting off talks until after the election. Well, if you have bills to pay and mouths to feed and you have rent due, you don't want to hear that from the leader of the United States of America. You want to hear something encouraging, something helpful. So in these down ballot races for Congress and other seats, it's probably a safe bet for Democrats to run against Donald Trump in a decision like this. And it would probably be a wise bet for Republicans to try to distance themselves.
All right, Jim Byrne, I'm going to bring you in next. In the fact that Connor Lamb and the last, I believe, 2 packages that came up through the Congress, that he voted against it. He voted against his party. How do you think this is going to affect?
He did vote against his party. I've always cautioned Democrats up in that district not to play patty cake because it's not going to get them any votes. I mean, ask Jason Altmaier how that worked out for him. That's the chairman in me talking. But having said that, this is a different conversation on this decision by President Trump to unilaterally, arbitrarily, and capriciously cut off negotiations, while both sides, by their own admission, who were at the table, were making significant progress. You know, to use negotiation tactics, the Democrats were at 2.4 and the Republicans were at 1.6. I think we all knew where they were going, and maybe within a few more days they would have hit that magic number 2.0. The Federal Reserve Chairman, a member of President Trump's own cabinet, said, we need this deal. We need this deal last month. We need this deal immediately. And he unilaterally pulled the plug, and he gave no reason other than saying, we'll do it after the election. My 2 cents, he's upset by the fact that he's slipping in the polls and he's holding Americans hostage. You're either going to vote for me or you're not going to get the money. I would not put it past this man's thinking to be that being a motivation behind this. But he wears this and he wears this alone. How does it affect the down ballot races? His coattails are so bad that they're inverted. We can tie as Democrats any congressional candidate to this president on his handling of COVID and now on his cutting off stimulus money to a country that's suffering as bad as it has since the Great Depression. He admitted to owning it. Let's let him own it, and let's see if Republicans on the down ballot will distance themselves from this egregious error.
All right, Sam DeMarco, I have this sneaky suspicion that you are not going to agree with Jim Byrne on this one.
I couldn't be farther apart from the former chairman there. One, the devil's always in the details. And one of the things, and I believe the governor will agree with me here, is Republicans always seem to lose the messaging battles here. Nancy Pelosi, it takes 2 to negotiate. She's not negotiating. When you talk about dollars, all she's been doing is shortening the term or the duration of her proposed bill. Let me tell you about some of the things that are in her bill. She wants stimulus payments to go to illegal immigrants. She wants ballot harvesting and elections to be made national law. She wants voter ID to be outlawed and repealed from all the states in the union. There's all these things that she wants that have nothing to do with COVID. And that's why the president tweeted out the other night, Nancy, send me a clean bill. We'll send $1,200 to every person in America tomorrow. Send me a clean bill. And the $138 billion of the CARES Act money that's yet to be unspent, we'll free it up and send it to small business. She won't do that. It's Nancy Pelosi that's holding the American public here hostage. And that's one of the reasons why Connor Lamb had to vote against that. So he wasn't tied to all those extraneous things that she's thrown in that package.
All right. I want to move on to our last subject here, and that is sort of a shock to the political world. Republican Senator of Pennsylvania, Pat Toomey, announced that he's going to be leaving elective office. A lot of people expected him not to run for the Senate again, and then instead run for the governor of Pennsylvania in 2 years. Sam, I'm going to start with you. Was this a shock to you that he's going to leave elective office?
Yes, it was. I think it was a shock to everybody. Many folks had anticipated that he might leave the Senate, and then they thought that he might run for governor. But you know what? I'd like to congratulate and thank Senator Toomey and his family for their service and for all the service that he's given us and the people of Pennsylvania here. So while it's a shock, I think Republicans have a deep bench. There are a lot of folks out there, and I think we're going to be fine.
That's why I was going to throw this out, is that this throws everything now wide open. I mean, there's even talk that Joe Mystic might decide to run for Senate at this point.
Well, Joe and I could be a bipartisan ticket, all right?
Him and I could share the seat. I think we could do some
okay.
things, right?
So, Joe,
it's a wonderful thing about politics, isn't it, though? Every now and then, opportunity just kind of appears on the horizon when you least expect it. And it's the most exciting time in politics. So after that announcement, there are a lot of good people in both parties are out there thinking about their opportunities, thinking about their chances, trying to line up support. It's an exciting time. And, I congratulate Senator Toomey for making the announcement when he has, to give people time to sort of get in line. I'm looking forward to a spirited contest.
For several offices, as a matter of fact.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Exactly. Mayor Frye, you're sitting there in Newcastle. Any thoughts about Senator Toomey, a member of your party, deciding not to run for elective office again?
Yes, my biggest concern would be, who's going to be the guy for governor. Within the party and conversations that I've had we've all been speculating on who it is, who's going to do it. And I think him looking to go into the private sector, I'm all for, he's 24 years in politics or somewhere around there, looking to shift gears, that does open the door for somebody new, somebody fresh to take his seat. But also, now we have the question, who's going to be the one in the running for the governor. I'm still very curious to see who picks that ball up. All
right, that's good. Amanda, your thoughts?
Well, it's certainly a shock to me. Because I know that Senator Toomey has had some long service in government, and as someone who has taken that oath to serve constituents in the community, I understand and recognize how important and serious that oath is. And so I definitely appreciate his service to Pennsylvania. And I also appreciate his announcement this early to give people time to get things together and, explore whether or not they want to run for that Senate seat. Because we know that times change, perspectives change, and it's important to have new blood in office to represent people. And I think that it was also interesting. I saw something in the news recently where I think Governor Wolf and Senator Toomey were looking at perhaps term limits for certain elected offices. And I think that Senate seat may be one of them. And so I commend him for his service and for his courage to stand up and be a proponent of that.
All right, Amanda, thank you. Jim Byrne, I'm going to bring you in here. If you were still the party chairman, would this be a case of trying to herd cats right now?
Sooner rather than later. If I were state chairman right now, it would remind me of the dynamic we had in 2012 and 2013 when I was state chairman, when we had an inevitable clash of titans coming up in the spring of 2014. I remember distinctly at the February winter meeting, myself and Chairman Brady from Philadelphia sitting down in a room with Allison Schwartz, Katie McGinney, Rob McCord, and Tom Wolf, and trying to set some ground rules and trying to figure out how we were going to get through a contentious primary and not be irreparably damaged for the general election. This now takes some of that pressure away. Now you don't have one seat, you have two. And that's going to help the chairman and those out there who all need to be at the table, whether you're party establishment or not, having a cohesive collective conversation about who should be, who has the best chance to win. As a chairman, you always have to think like a coach. Doesn't matter if it's your best friend or not. If they can't deliver, they should not be on the field. That's a conversation the entire party needs to have. If it were tomorrow, Josh Shapiro is the best guy to carry the ball for governor. For Senate, new conversation. My 2 cents, the Democrats need to nominate a qualified woman candidate for that seat. It's long enough. It's time to do it. There's plenty of qualified women on our bench that could step up and serve remarkably well in that seat. And up until the fly buzzing on Mike Pence's head last night, that was the biggest buzz in politics in Pennsylvania, the Toomey thing.
I knew you were going to work that in at some point. All right. I'm going to now bring in for our last comment on our program today, and that would be Governor Corbin. Governor, first, was this a shock to you, and do you have any desire to run for the Senate?
Let me answer the second one. No.
All right.
I was shocked by it because I've been watching what was going on, seeing who's kind of lining themselves up, and how you do that is you get out and about. And I would say in the last year, maybe 18 months, Senator Toomey was out and about much more than he was before that. And he was doing it in a more casual manner. It wasn't always the coat and tie, sometimes a sport coat, sometimes just the shirt. It's those little things where he was going, okay, he's kind of looking. Secondly, when he first ran for Congress, he said he was going to term limit himself. I think he was limiting himself to 3 terms. And he basically did that and stepped back and then ran for the Senate. Didn't term limit himself, but there's 12 years right there. And I think he came to the point where I've gotten to the point, we need term limits. The executives are term limited. There's maybe 1 or 2 states that they aren't. The president's term limited. But it's the legislature that is not term limited, at least in this state and in the federal government. And that's what makes it difficult to get things done, because I think many times those who have been in office 10, 20, 30 years, 40 years, they're looking at how do I stay in office more so than what am I doing in the best interest, not just of my local constituency, but of my state and of the United States. And I think if there is one of the flaws of the U.S. Constitution and our Constitution is we don't limit the amount of time somebody can be in the House or in the Senate. And I think this is a time to really see if we can't get that changed.
All right. I want to thank all of you for joining us once again on Around the Table. We've had a great discussion today, a lot of different topics. And I also want to extend our thanks to Sam DeMarco for joining us, filling in for Keith Schmidt today. Sam, you're a great addition today. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Stacy.
All right. We'll see all of you again next week on Around the Table, Politics 2020.